Hey there, I know it's been a while. More than I'd like, admittedly, but we are officially back in the saddle and we are returning to our roots by talking about Call of Duty Zombies. You guys absolutely ate this content up, so it only makes sense to pick it up now following the official reveal of Black Ops 6. In this video, we will be going back to the very beginning, expressing my thoughts on each entry as well as giving a ranking. So with that being said, let's go all the way back to Noctur Untoten. In World at War, the community was pleasantly surprised to be greeted by the sight of a bonus mode following the completion of the campaign. And this was as bare bones as it could get, which as the origins of the mode, I can't hold against it. This established the baseline as well as the core foundation of the gameplay mechanics moving forward. Points, weapon wall buys, the mystery box all started here, and perks and pack-a-punch made their appearance throughout the course of this game's content season. You combine that with some great maps, such as my personal favorite from this entry, Verrucht, and we had a great opening with no idea just how high the enjoyment could go. But as this is the starting point of all zombies, it feels fair to rank it as C. As stated, it is the baseline, so it can't really be any lower, and we've had games that will sit higher, so that's why I decided to put it here. Black Ops 1. Most of the time when people have memories of playing zombies, this is what they're referring to. Typically, you'll get some story about how they had a clutch moment training on Kino's stage while using the Thunder Gun. Which, let me take the time to make some people mad. Kino, I have to say, is one of the most overrated maps of all time, and I will die on this hill. The gameplay is super repetitive and the map's generic, and if one door is open, the only good training spot is gone. But that's not to say this game doesn't have highlights. For me, the highlights are absolutely Shangri-La and Call of the Dead. And a special soft spot for 5. This is the era of Treyarch really pushing the bounds of what a zombie map could be. Considering over the course of this game we travel through time and journey across vastly different areas following the path of Richthofen's grand scheme. Which reminds me, this is where we really get to feel who we are playing as and develop some sort of attachment to them, even if they are fairly shallow in terms of characterization at this point. The fond memories of these characters will always be one of the first things my mind goes to when I think about Black Ops 1 Zombies. How I wish I could say the same for our next entry. Overall, this game does a lot to try new things and for the most part sticks to landing, so even with the few faults it has, I'm going to put it into the B tier. Black Ops 2. This is where a lot of the modern audience really got into zombies. I mean, almost everyone has played Transit at least once. Following the destruction of Earth during the events of Moon, our original cast was trapped on Griffin Station, meaning we had to introduce some fresh new faces to get things going. And they were interesting. Yeah, let's use that word moving forward. For the main storyline of Black Ops 2, we played as Russman, Stuhlinger, Misty, and Marlton, otherwise known as the Victus crew. And they, for the most part, all had things that made them potentially interesting to explore as the story went on, but nothing narratively paid off over the course of the game. They simply existed to further Richthofen or Maxis' schemes. I mean, we had Russman's amnesia and hints of how he worked at this shady organization called Broken Arrow, but we really didn't hear anything major about that until the Black Ops 4 map Alpha Omega, where even then, there's still no real payoff to Russman's existence. Stuhlinger being a member of the Flesh Society, and for the uninitiated, that is a group of people who believed it was wise to consume the flesh of zombies, which only culminated in Richthofen being a backseat driver in his head. And in terms of maps and gameplay, this entry is all over the spectrum. I feel this game more than any has the biggest height difference between its highs and lows. On one end you have maps such as Origins and Mob of the Dead and Buried, but on the other you have Transit and Die Rise. Which I will also say, for the record, Transit is 100% better than Die Rise because I feel that if you play Transit in co-op, it can be unintentionally really fun. Playing it solo, however, is still miserable. Die Rise is just bad no matter if you have 1 player or 4. I'm sorry, Mr. T-Lexify. I hate to do this to you. But with all this in mind, I have to put it BO2 in A tier. While it has inconsistency, 2 larger-than-life zombies experiences call this game home, so I have to go with my gut and recognize that. Now let's address the elephant in the room, and that is today's sponsor, Odd Horizons. If you've been around my page lately, you'll notice I've been taking a bit of a hiatus, and this channel is part of the reason for that, because me as well as my best friends have been absolutely pouring our souls into working on a new brand that we hope will evolve and grow to deliver high-quality content on a consistent basis, as well as push the bounds as to what YouTubers can achieve. We have gameplay videos, podcasts, and more, and if you want to help be a part of it, please go subscribe and share with everyone you know. The link for Odd Horizons is on my channel page and will be in the description below. Now back to the video. No, but seriously, there is an elephant, and that is the fact that Treyarch isn't the only studio under Activision to make a zombies mode. Sledgehammer Games was the first to follow in Treyarch's footsteps with Exo Zombies, released during the content cycle of Advanced Warfare, which I will note you did hear me correctly. It launched during the content cycle, not at the launch of the game. This is the only time where the first zombies experience in a game was tethered to the release of Season 1, as there was 0 zombies content at launch unless you count the cutscene you got as part of their survival mode challenge. And when it finally came about, Exo Zombies really didn't innovate too much. Now, I'm not the biggest Exo Zombies hater in existence. There are some things that genuinely make sense to complain about. Of their few innovations, most of them I would consider to be horrible. From the infection mechanic, which requires you to reposition to a quarantine device or die after the time expires, to having to pack-a-punch your weapon 20 times just to get it to maximum effectiveness. It just didn't really do it for a lot of people. So to have all these issues in maps such as Burger Town, and yes, I know that's not the map name, but shut up, we know what it is. It just culminates into an overall subpar product, and that's coming from a guy who likes Carrier besides the Atlas agents showing up, and it's because of this I have to rank it as a D tier experience. And now that we're back on track, we can talk about my favorite game in COD Zombies history, Black Ops 3. And I know there will be some older fans telling me that this isn't what Zombies was about, because during this game you fight squid monsters, meet gods, and chew magic bubblegum. But here's all I'll say. You guys had asteroids create a worldwide zombie epidemic, teleporters, and time travel, which are all very super normal things to have for sure. But this game was incredible. The hype going in was astounding, only being bested by one other game in the future, but I digress. I mean, you launched with what I now consider to be my favorite map of all time, Shadows of Evil, and had a damn good run by the time the season wrapped. With my only slight complaints being Zetsubo and Revelation, simply because Zetsubo is super buggy on launch and has a lackluster Easter egg, and Revelations just isn't a good final map for a game in my opinion. But I mean, come on, this overall is a great season of content, which I would argue is the game with the most consistently high map quality we have ever seen. Gobblegums initially concerned me, but I absolutely fell in love with them by the time the game came out. And while yes, I do find it annoying that there are gums that let you shortcut progression or let you achieve a full perk loadout, which otherwise would be impossible, they add so much to the experience I can't imagine BO3 without them. And let me take some time to talk about the premise cast during this game. These are by far my favorite versions of these characters of all time. Some complain that they feel too sad and depressing, but I would argue that's their biggest strength. You feel such an empathetic connection to these characters as all they want to do is set things right and go home. They don't want to keep going, but they keep fighting in hopes of a better tomorrow. Oh, did you think we were done? I mean, with the content season wrapped, what is there to talk about? Oh, that's right, the single best DLC in gaming history, Zombies Chronicles. The anticipation was through the roof by this point that any microscopic detail was being scrutinized and blown out of proportion as a way to prove that DLC 5 was happening. And one fateful day, on JC Backfire's channel, he appeared, Jason Blundell, lurking in the shadows for an entire stream to make his presence known at the end, setting up the most confusion hype the Zombies community has ever seen. Unveiling Chronicles as well as an official timeline was met with wild fanfare. Hearing that 8 classic maps were getting the remastered treatment into Black Ops 3 was enough to prove that the legacy of Black Ops 3 being the definitive Zombies experience was solidified. With that, I must give this game the S tier ranking. I mean, there's just no way around it. It is a phenomenal experience that set the bar so high that part of me fears we will never reach it again. Infinity Ward saw Sledgehammer take a crack at zombies and decided to follow suit in Infinite Warfare, a game that the community largely panned upon its reveal and even more so at launch. And while the multiplayer is an abomination that cannot be redeemed, the Zombies mode started off strong. Zombies in Spaceland is one of the most fun maps, maybe not the best designed, but fun maps. When you're running through this theme park, I feel you can't help but have fun. While Fate and Fortune cards may not be as iconic as Gobblegums, I'm glad to still see them here. And arguably, they could be seen as more balanced than Gobblegums depending on who you ask. And once again, we do see a game that didn't really try to shake up gameplay all that much. No real innovations besides the ability to properly double pack-a-punch, instead of the power-up double pack-a-punch we saw in Black Ops 3. And while I really enjoy Spaceland and Raven the Redwoods, that's about as far as my praise can reach. After that, I would largely consider the rest of the releases as a downhill slope, culminating in my least favorite map of all time, Beast from Beyond. By this point, hardly anyone was playing, and I can't say I blame them. For that, I'm giving this game a C tier ranking. Call of Duty World War II also featured a zombies mode, and it failed to miss the mark almost instantly after the first map. The first map is genuinely pretty good, all things considered. It's very simplified, but for a starting map of a game, I can't say that's always a bad thing. But this went south quick, and while I did recently go back and replay some of this game, and I did find it slightly more enjoyable than I did the first time, overall, I can't remember anything that this game really tried to do differently other than the inclusion of the diary mechanic that basically just told you what to do to start the map as well as solving the Easter egg, which I didn't care for. If it was simply there to help you learn a map, that's one thing, but hand-holding the Easter egg is another entirely. Not to mention, one of the proper DLCs wasn't even a map. It was 3 repurposed micro-sections of other maps in basically its own game mode. Now, if this had been released as a free content offering towards the beginning of the game, I would have probably praised it. It's moderately fun, but it's just something different, but it's not worth the $15 they were charging for it, and when it came out, the community was already in dire straits. I'm giving this game an F tier, and I'm sorry for the few fans of this game, but compared to everything else, this really just didn't do anything for me to warrant placing it higher on the list. Black Ops 4 is next on our trip down memory lane, and remember when I made that comment about there being only one other game that I could see having more hype going into it than BO3? Well, here it is. I mean, we were clamoring for Black Ops 4 to release, and when we heard we were getting 4 full maps at launch, we thought we were dreaming. But that dream unfortunately quickly turned into a nightmare. The game was virtually unplayable at launch. The amount of content was so high that no one was having a similar enough experience to really talk or share anything about it. And the amount of changes from core gameplay mechanics really pivoted things in a strange way for the franchise moving forward. From pocket wonder weapons to customizable perk loadouts to swapping out gobblegum for elixirs, which were useless and made the HUD even more ugly than it would be without it. And on the subject of perks, the idea of removing quote-unquote crutch perks is stupid, because by removing them, players just picked the next 4 strongest perks in the game and ran with them. This isn't a game that can support classes or really a whole lot of different playstyles to warrant this change, because with the inclusion of perks like Dying Wish, you'd practically have to be an idiot to not run it. Not to mention from a map standpoint, this game is definitely a mixed bag. Voyage of Despair is borderline unplayable with just how annoying its layout and mechanics are, to maps like Tog der Toten, which I actually enjoy a decent amount. Although that map falls into the same cast as Revelations, where it isn't a good final map for me. And all we got for the Aether storyline was remakes, and the Chaos storyline failed to capture people's attention, which was due in part to trying to launch a new storyline while simultaneously ending a 10-year saga. Overall, I have to give this mode a B. It could have been a lot higher on this list, but there's just too much going against it. I feel that there's a pretty good level of fun to be had, but after 3, this was just lackluster. Cold War picks up following Eddie and Samantha entering the new universe following the events of Black Ops 4, where we entered what I consider the generic era. Like, Cold War is consistent for the most part, but it is consistently average, only ever deviating slightly higher or lower from map to map. The gameplay is simple enough to where the multiplayer fans of the franchise can jump right in, kill zombies, and go home, using their operator skins acquired through the in-game store. In doing so, the heart and soul of zombies is gone here. No characters means no impactful lines to make you resonate with anything going on in the story, and the gameplay is so simplified, between the addition of ammo crates as well as armor and leveling up your perks, you become basically a god, which cheapens in-match progression a lot, ruining the progression loop that Zombies was built on. The HUD in this game, while cleaner than BO4, is still covered in useless information, like a compass. Why is that there? Who needs a compass in the zombie mode? Not to mention the constant medals popping up from doing the slightest thing. It quickly devolves into feeling like even more of an afterthought than Activision normally sees it as. I give this game a C for outstanding achievements and mediocrity. Like we've established here, there are worse entries, but there are definitely better ones as well. Closing out the list here, we have Vanguard and MW3 Zombies. Why am I lumping them together, you may ask? Simple. These are both going in the same tier. The Gutterball tier. I despise what both of these modes represent. Both of them took the side mode from Cold War Outbreak and made it the main focus, and somehow made it worse when it was the main meal instead of the side dish that it started as. I didn't mind it as a bonus mode in Cold War. I was actually genuinely impressed that they managed to bring in a side offering that worked, and I was excited to see what they could shape with it in the future, as an accompaniment to round-based. But instead, we got these piles of garbage, and I mean, if you got suckered into buying MW3 in general, I feel bad for you, but I definitely feel bad for you if it was for zombies. These two entries are utter failures for a mode that I absolutely love. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, Black Ops 6 was officially revealed, and I'd like to share my thoughts regarding zombies with what we know so far. Now, keep in mind, during a very long showcase discussing this game, Zombies was given about 2 to 3 minutes, which is insultingly low for such a core piece of Call of Duty. From what we did here, Gobblegum would be returning, as well as round-based, which I can't believe we were at the point where we have to confirm that the game they are making is what people are actually asking for at the bare minimum. The last confirmation would be that we are using the operator system once more. Now, there is a slight caveat to that. There will be 4 characters that if you play as them, you will actually get voice lines more closely to what you're familiar with in good zombie modes. But you can choose to play as generic ops if you so desire. So I'll count that as a partial victory. They also confirmed that we will have 2 round-based maps at the launch of the game, so that is definitely something to praise, as I've always felt we should get 2 with each zombie launch. There should always be a simple map that you can get into quicker for the newer players, and then a more complicated or advanced map for the veteran players. That way everyone is happy. Now, my current takeaway from all this is, it'll likely be a step in the right direction, but we will have to wait and see. From my limited information, I am hopeful that the community can come back, but only time will tell on that front. But with that, I leave you my thoughts of the past as well as the future for Call of Duty Zombies. Like I said, please go check out my second channel, Odd Horizons, where we post new content every week and would love to add you to our community. And I'll hopefully see you on Odd Horizons and in my next video. Goodbye, everyone.